If you have got a limited budget and you are a first home buyer and you want to create a new lifestyle, there's definitely a benefit at the moment in my view.
Family, 1, 2 kids, wanting to spend between 1 mil to 1.5 mil. What are some of the suburbs in Melbourne that you could look at?
Avoid it. From an investment point of view, buy anything that you can with land.
I have a special guest today. I have a father, a husband, a director, a property advocate, Rob German. What is some of those main skills that you've learned over the journey?
When you start in real estate, you think it's all about the properties, and it's actually not about the properties. It's about the people.
Couldn't believe that doing the recent calculations for a first home buyer.
To your clients, if they're looking at investing, I would say to them, look for some dirt.
Where do you see the property market in Melbourne now?
Look, I think...
Welcome back to That Backyard Property Pod.
Welcome to Melbourne.
Thank you.
How are you enjoying it?
It hasn't rained since I've been here. And it's been raining every day since I left Perth. So
Very positive.
loving it, absolutely loving it.
You still
and good
get
to have
4
you here.
seasons in one day, but you may not get rain.
Yes, well, it's been beautiful so far. Beautiful so far. So yeah, today we're going to cover off everything. The Melbourne property market is obviously quite hot on people's tongues at the moment. Buyers advocacy, vendor advocacy, the business, full circle property advocacy. But I'd love to touch on what a home means to you first.
Well, I think the definition of a home is somewhere you reside, but at the end of the day, I think there's a lot more to it. It's stability, it's acceptance, it's a place where you can be yourself. It's a place where you share food, break bread, enjoy the family, create a safe environment for your children. I think at the end of the day, you need a space that everybody can enjoy in one epicenter, and a space where everybody can break out and enjoy individual members of the family, friends, and of course, who you want to spend the most time with, your partner in crime, your wife.
Yeah. And you got the kids, and I guess is there an element to trying to recreate your own childhood memories with your kids?
Look, at the end of the day, I think it's really important to create your own memories, but your substance, your basic fundamentals, your foundations that you teach your kids come from where you came from and what you were taught. So yeah, I think it's really important to pass on where you came from and what your basic principles in life are, and find an agenda that you and your wife can sit within and be the same as, preach the same prayer, sing the same song.
Yeah.
But I think it's also really important to create your own memories and create your own principles and your own foundation for the kids. The kids are the best thing I've ever done in life, and the most challenging thing I've ever done in life. And I was a younger dad. Well, I was always an older dad. I was 39 when I had my first, 49 when I had my last. That's right, I think, yeah. 39 and 49. So, 37 and 49, sorry. So I've got 18 turning 19, 9 turning 10, and just turned 7. So I've got a very broad spectrum of children. I've got a child that's starting nursing, and I've got a child in grade 1.
That's amazing.
So I'm touching on all of the different areas still.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you're obviously a businessman as well, and you've been in the real estate industry for a number of decades. How did that journey start?
That started in 1986, so 40 years next year. Wow. A long, long time. I started in real estate when I was 17 with my father. I'm a second generation estate agent. My dad started in 1958, before there was any real rules to real estate. You shot from the hip and made it up as you went along.
Yeah. And so you start with Dad. I know that's something we obviously have in common that we spoke about before, that I started in real estate with my mum, and people were always, how can you work with your mum? That was what we got a lot. And Dad was also in the business too. But I had such a beautiful relationship with them that I loved, and I learnt so much from them, especially Mum. Is that the same relationship you had with your dad when you were working with him?
Look, I definitely had a special relationship with him. I definitely was challenged at times. I think when you work with your parents, there's that little bit of, he's still a kid, and you're trying to grow up in an environment that is a business environment. And as a result of that, I think it becomes really challenging. We worked together for about 13 years. It was some great memories.
Wow.
learned a hell of a lot from him. But at the same time, when I did break away, he went out of real estate, sold the business. I moved on to another firm and developed my own business acumen and my own history in the business. I think it was really important. It was really important to learn from others, not just from Dad.
Yeah. And so you've been in the industry for nearly 40 years. How much has it changed in that time?
Oh, wow. So when I started in the industry, I had a two-way radio in the car. Then we went to alphanumeric pages. We had no computers, no fax machines, no mobile phones. We had our after-hours number on our cards that we used to hand out. So you'd be at home at 9 o'clock at night and your phone would ring and you'd answer it, and it'd be a client or a prospective client on the phone ringing your after-hours number.
Wow. And now you're accessible 24/7.
Well, you're accessible 24/7. Yes, you have emails. Yes, you have a mobile phone, but you also have the ability not to answer it. And being in control of your destiny and being in control of your phone and your emails is really important. Servicing your clients, being there for them in very trying times. You may have just purchased, it might have been a clause of subject to a building and pest or whatever it might be. So there are times where your clients are at that emotional heightened state of needing support, and you will answer it, but you also need to balance that.
Yeah. And we'll go on about balancing home and work life a bit later. What skills have you learned in all of that time? Because you're clearly a successful property advocate in your own right. What is some of those main skills that you've learned over the journey?
Look, the biggest skill I've learned is when you start in real estate, you think it's all about the properties. And it's actually not about the properties. It's about the people. And it's about managing people's expectations and managing people's emotions. The property is an addendum. Through the journey, you'll learn to find the right property for them or sell the right property to them. But I think at the end of the day, it's about dealing with people. And that is challenging. People are challenging.
Certainly are. They certainly are. And your business as a property advocate, full circle, how did that start?
That started for a couple of reasons. The first reason was that I got to a point in general real estate. So I was managing a team of about 8 people at the time. That was specifically our sales division. I got to a point where I was pretty much over managing people. Vendors are always wanting to sort of hear the highest price that can be achieved for a property instead of a realistic value that might be true to what's going to occur, and occasionally you get great competition and an outstanding result. Buyers always wanted to try and buy things for the least amount of money, and those agendas often didn't meet, and you become the go-between, and there's only so long that you can manage that relationship of being the go-between. And I decided that I actually didn't want to play that role anymore. I wanted to play a support role. And now what I actually do as an advocate is play that support role. Clients are referred to me. I work on a referral-only basis. And as a result of that, it means that client is actually looking for emotional support more than anything else. And we become part of a team. It's a team of the building and pest inspector, the mortgage broker, the solicitor or conveyancer, the advocate, which is me, all working together to achieve one result. And let me tell you, the difference of being in a relationship of part of a team as opposed to being an adversary relationship is an absolute joy. It's changed my whole outlook on what I do and how I achieve it.
And you just enjoy it more. Like when did this transition start?
It's about 5.5, nearly 6 years ago now. It actually happened by mistake. I had a very good friend of mine who is a commercial advocate, and I walked into my partner in real estate, and I said to him in January, I've had to think about it over the Christmas break, and I'm done. I'm out of here. And we did a deal. He paid me out. I left, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. And then I was on an aeroplane actually going on a holiday with my family, and I sat next to this fellow and we started to chat, and I realised that he actually knew this commercial advocate that I knew. In fact, he was a very good friend, and I told him where I was at in life, and he said, well, why don't you do residential advocacy? And I thought, look, I'm not sure about it, and I haven't thought about that, and I'm not entirely convinced that that's the right thing to do. And he said, look, I tell you what, come and see me when you come back from holidays. And I went and saw him and he said, look, I've got a couple of clients that I think you can help. Let's do this on a little bit of an informal scenario and let's see whether it works for you. And clearly it worked for me.
Now here we are. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's where it happened.
Yeah. Changing tact, Melbourne property market. It is clearly on a hot topic at the moment. It was Perth for a few years there, and everyone's sort of chasing the next big thing, and certainly not doing any headline grabbing here. But where do you see the property market in Melbourne now, and where do you see it moving in the next 12 months to 2 years?
Look, I think 12 months to 24 months is a very short time in real estate. I don't doubt for a moment that we are going to see gains as interest rates come back and become more competitive and people have a little bit more cash in their pocket, whether they're investing or whether they're buying bigger homes, downsizing, whatever the reason may be. There is definitely demand increasing. There is definitely more competition. I know the other states are looking at us and saying, well, you're the lowest medium house price, even lower than Brisbane at the moment, so it's great value. So let's look to invest in Melbourne. We do have some issues. I think that you've got to look at our onerous tenancy requirements. I'm not sure whether everybody's aware in other states we've had changes to the tenancy laws which make it quite onerous from a landlord's point of view. We've got
What's the
minimum requirements have been increased, tenants' rights have been increased, and as a result, it is a bit more challenging to own residential property. But if you buy the right properties, they're not as challenging as you might think. We have stamp duty, the highest stamp duty in Australia, so it's expensive to buy.
I couldn't believe that doing the recent calculations for a first home buyer. The NT and WA are always quite high in terms of nationally, and Queensland was always quite low, and Melbourne, Victoria and New South Wales sort of sat in the middle there. Now Victoria, stamp duty is so much higher than everywhere else.
Unfortunately, it's not going to change. Nearly 50% of state coffers income comes from stamp duty. So nearly every dollar that the state earns, half of it comes from stamp duty. So people sit back and they say, oh, look, we think it's going to reduce. It's not going to reduce because the state is already broke and needs income. So it's not going to reduce at all. But it's just one of the challenges in buying real estate, and it's one of the expenses that you factor into buying, and it's really not something that you think about once you've paid it. What you're looking for on residential real estate is capital growth. And I think that Melbourne as a state Victoria as a state and Melbourne as a capital city has got lots of legs. There's no reason why, with the population growth that's projected, the projects that are going on in Melbourne, we shouldn't be growing at the sort of same rates that New South Wales are. Yet we are still far more affordable and far cheaper. And I think that that's going to be a good place to park your money, whether you're an investor or an owner-occupier. It's a good place to park your money. There's all sorts of areas in Melbourne that have become beneficial to park your money from the point of view that COVID has changed the way we live. And I know it's changed in every state the way that we live. That work from home balance, that 60-40 split that a lot of people are working on, whether it's 60% in an office or 40% in an office, but it is running at about 60-40, has created a situation where people are willing to live further from their work because they're going to their work less, which has created some great capital growth in some of the regional areas. The Mornington Peninsula had some huge capital growth. It dropped away. It's starting to get a little bit better now. So if you'd bought 3 to 5 years ago, you paid premium prices. Now you're probably just starting to get to a break-even point, but that's going to continue to grow. Places like Phillip Island has had nearly 100% growth, then it dropped back, and now it's coming back strong again. The southeastern corridor of Melbourne, which you've got the Mornington Peninsula bypass and the Dingley bypass, which has created some huge benefits there as well. I think there's so many growth corridors and so much potential in Melbourne, and every region has a reason why it's going to capitalise, that you'd be crazy if you're looking at investing not to park your money in Melbourne. It's the most potential of any state at the moment.
Yeah, it's what it looks like from the outside looking in, but you never quite. It was like in Perth in sort of 2019, 2020, just pre-COVID, and you could feel that there was this movement. There was some more heat in the market, and no one really knew what was going on, but you could just feel there was more people at home opens, there was multiple offer situations, and you just feel something in the market. And I imagine maybe Melbourne is starting to feel a bit of that almost tension to build.
Look, it's still a little bit fickle in some areas. So good family homes that don't require any work, no problems at all. They're running out the door. Development sites and homes that need substantial renovations, there are serious concerns still as to building costs. Townhouses and villa units, we call a townhouse a double-storey unit with 2, 3, 4, 5 on the block. Villa units single level. They have become incredibly popular now because of affordability. So it's changed. The Australian dream of everybody owning a home can sometimes mean a villa unit or a townhouse. So they're doing well, good villas and townhouses. But then the apartment market is still challenged. The 60s and 70s apartments are still doing well. They've stood the test of time. They're often good floor plans, often got balconies, often got outdoor areas. So they've done well. But the more recently constructed apartments that have questionable construction methods, questionable cladding issues, are challenged. So people that have bought them over the last 10 years, some of them aren't even seeing break even. So to your clients, if they're looking at investing, I would say to them, look for some dirt.
So the Melbourne property market, I'd love to get your opinion, your professional opinion on people buying within the market and where they could buy. Obviously not holding you to this, but if I was a first home buyer, what are some of the suburbs that I could look at?
Look, affordability has become really challenging. Often we focus on being the closest to the CBD, the business district. I think now, with they said as well, the shift of how we work, that I would probably look at areas like Phillip Island. It's an hour and 15, an hour and 25 minutes from Melbourne. You buy a good family home for between $800 and $1 million. So if I was a first home buyer, I might look more regionally for a lifestyle home. If I was in a first home buyer that wanted to stay sort of in Melbourne, I'd probably be looking more product than area, townhouse or villa unit, wherever that can work. Southeast and eastern primarily is where I work, but I do work all over Melbourne. But yeah, it's more about product as opposed to just the area. But if you have got a limited budget and you are a first home buyer and you want to create a new lifestyle, regional is definitely a benefit at the moment, in my view.
And this is a very common client type of mine, upgrading, family, 1, 2 kids, wanting to spend between 1 mil to 1.5 mil. What are some of the suburbs in Melbourne that you could look at?
Look, again, I would probably at the moment look at the Mornington Peninsula. We've now got, it's southeast, it's considered part of Melbourne, although it doesn't feel like part of Melbourne. It's close to the water. You've got Mordialloc, Mentone, areas like that, which are not too far away. It's southeast again. It's not too far away from Melbourne itself. But for that 1 to 1.5 million, you'll still buy either a good villa or townhouse, or you'll buy a reasonable home, and it gives you a bit of a lifestyle. It gives you the water. It gives you something different. I think ownership for people nowadays has changed. It used to be about buying near mum and dad so I can get the babysitting services, or buying near work because I don't want to have to travel too far, to where will that home suit my lifestyle and where can I create a home for that lifestyle.
That's great. And the last one that I was thinking about in terms of types of clients is an investor. So someone like myself, or someone that, especially in the Perth market, they've done well, they've bought 3-4 years ago and they've got 100, 200K worth of equity that they could use as a deposit. Where could they look at to hopefully get some form of capital growth?
Look, I think, again, avoid apartments. Don't be buying any apartments. If you have to, then there's certain things, and we can obviously do that in another podcast, but there's certain boundaries that I look at, no main roads, no borrowed light, those types of things. But from an investment point of view, buy anything that you can with land. It will appreciate. Buildings depreciate, land appreciates. As an investor, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. So buy something that you know is going to attract a good tenant, that's going to have a bit of longevity, because tenants are transient, they move on. So if you can buy something that's not an apartment, that is a townhouse or a villa unit, right, that has an element of land, you will attract obviously maybe a family, and they will rent until they can afford to buy, and therefore you'll have consistency and some regularity with tenants. Around that 850 to $1 million, you will find again, you can go out to areas like Mount Eliza, Mount Martha, and buy an a villa or a townhouse. Or obviously you can go out to places like Hawthorn, Camberwell, and buy an apartment, but buy a 70s apartment or a 60s apartment.
Yeah, I'd love to dig deeper into those things on a list that you're trying to avoid. So main road, busy road. What else would you put on that list?
Must have off-street parking. Preferably a 60s or a 70s product that stood the test of time. No borrowed light. I don't know if your listeners have ever heard of borrowed light. Borrowed light is windows that look into hallways internally or externally into your apartment, or light wells. They're not conducive to a nice environment. Obviously, low rise with no lifts, no gyms, etc., because they just add expense and often unused expense. Outlooks are really important. Orientation, north is the best, obviously. So there's quite a lengthy list. If you're going to buy in an owner's corporation, talk to the owner's corporation managers, get some minutes to the last sort of 3-4 annual meetings and find out what's going on. Often they're a window to the negatives within the development. Go into the basements. If it has a basement, look for water. Puddles often create a sense of what's going on in that building. Smelly rubbish, bikes thrown everywhere. As you're walking through hallways, look at carpet. Is it water damaged? Are walls water damaged? That's going to tell you about how well it stood the test of time and whether it has dampness issues or not. So there's quite a number of things that the trained eye looks for that sometimes I don't even get to the apartment. I turn around and leave before I even get to the apartment. If you're inspecting a property and the agent says, oh, look, I'm busy at the moment, I've got it open for inspection, but I can't show you the basement. Don't buy it without going into the basement. Look at the parking space. Look at the storage cage. Look at what's going on.
Because it's so common firstly, Australian property is talked about so much, and everyone wants to have property and they want to be an investor and all those sort of things, and everyone's an expert. But they also, when I talk to people about investing, they generally just want to buy where they know. Oh, I know this suburb and that's all I want to buy. And you think, well, there's so many more markets in Australia and you need to seek advice from someone like yourself. It just makes so much sense.
Absolutely. Look, I think a lot of people tend to purchase where it's familiar. Familiarity does breed a bit of contempt, though. So I think it's really important that you look outside that. Be careful, though, because what I find is there's lots of people out there that will give you advice, but it's self-serving advice. Look yourself, do some research, understand the market, understand what you're buying, understand what has happened historically. It's not a sure thing in predicting the future, but it certainly laments it to a degree. So just do your research, I think, is really important.
Is there anyone that you turn to within the market for research other than your own personal work?
Look, I obviously use the relevant websites that I have access to that the public don't have access to. There's lots of resources there that as agents or buyers advocates we have access to. But getting on the ground, going through opens, opening your ears up and listening to what other buyers are saying, watching what's happening at auctions and who's putting up their hand and how aggressively they're bidding and what the product is that they're bidding for. Talking to agents, many agents, not one agent, and then sorting the chaff from the wheat and figuring out what is consistent with all the agents speak will give you a good concept of what's going on in the market. So I always say to people, if you're looking at buying, do the research. Boots on the ground.
You mentioned auctions there. auctions aren't that common in Perth. They're incredibly common in Sydney. What are they like in Melbourne, and how do you go about approaching an auction as a buyer's advocate?
Look, auctions are not my ideal method of purchase. Auctions really, in the true sense, is an attendance of a number of buyers that will compete against each other, and whoever has the deepest pockets will generally have success. Now, you can strategize in all sorts of different ways. One of the ways that I choose to strategize is because I obviously know the agents. If I don't know the agent personally, I'll know his director or the director that knows that director of another office, and I will find out what my competition is. I'll find out what the vendor's motivation in selling is. I'll find out where other interested parties are thinking the property is worth. The more intellectual data I can get on what's going on within that environment gives me a lot of knowledge as to what's going to happen on the day. Together with doing my own research of what I believe the property's worth, and of course attending other auctions of similar properties, tells me what's going to happen. So we go to an auction with very little chance. We can generally predict what's going on, and we can generally know how many bidders there are, and we can generally buy because of that intellectual knowledge. If you go there randomly and just hope to buy, chances are somebody's going to have a deeper pocket than you, and chances are it's somebody else's turn to buy, because it will take a number of times for you to miss it, educate yourself, understand the process before it's your turn to buy.
I love that analogy. I obviously speaking with buyers on the other side in terms of the finance, and they miss out on properties and they just get so devastated. So you're almost at the start, I'm telling people, you will miss out on a few, and that's a good thing, because you learn for the next one. It just wasn't your turn, as you summed up there perfectly.
Well, what I always say to people is, if you go to an auction, and I do the same with my clients, if you go to an auction and this is the one, emotionally you are 100% connected to it. You don't have any other alternatives. If you miss out, you will crash. You will stop going to opens for a few weeks, and you'll have to dig yourself out of a hole. Whereas if you go to an auction and you've got 2 or 3 other properties that are prospective properties in your saved properties on realestate.com or in your exercise book, depending on what generation you come from, and you go to that property with the attitude of, if I can get it at this price, I will buy. If not, it's not my only option. It's one of my options. You will come away, if you miss out, with the right mindset to continue going. Otherwise, it can be soul destroying. Unfortunately, agents are not going to tell you how many buyers. They're not going to tell you what's really going to sell for. All those things that occur take time.
Do you have certain price points that you go to the auction for clients? Like, is there certain price points that you can't obviously exceed?
Generally with clients, what I say to them is, give me a range that you're prepared to buy in. Make sure that the upper end of that range is a level that if we miss out, you can walk away and not be disappointed. You can truly say to yourself, that is the best that I would have paid, and that is the best, most resource I could put to it. And I've missed out because somebody else had more money, and obviously that was the way it was meant to be. But I also do have a method where I will often, if a client's not in the state, because I do a lot of interstate work, I'll have them on the phone with pods in my ear so they can see what's going on, sometimes on FaceTime so they can actually watch what's going on, and they'll set me a limit, and then they will increase as we go along, depending on how much control the client wants, because it's obviously a very fluid thing that I do. Some clients, they don't want to talk to me during the auction. They give me a limit. They say, that's the way it is. Don't want to know what's going on. Call me afterwards. And some clients want to be involved in every step of the way. The clients that are involved in every step of the way, I say to them, look, even if you don't want to tell me, which is very rare, even if you don't want to tell me your absolute maximum, right, have it set, because otherwise it can get very out of hand. Talk to your broker beforehand.
Please. Please do that.
Don't commit without having spoken to your broker. A lot of brokers will back themselves, and especially ones that have been in the industry a bit longer. They'll know the client and they'll say, look, I'm comfortable with you going up to this level. They don't always require a pre-approval. I might be talking out of turn here because you might be a pre-approval man.
I guess it's got its place. There's also pre-approvals that aren't worth the paper they're written on as well. Yep. So it's very dependent on the conversation, the numbers, and whether the pre-approval is actually necessary.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah. Oh, interesting comment that you make. Pre-approvals aren't worth the paper they're written on, because I think there's only one or two banks that actually will back their pre-approvals, from what I understand.
Yeah, there's probably about half a dozen now.
Oh, that many? Okay.
Probably half a dozen that will do a full assessment. There's others that you can push and say, this is going to auction. We want a full assessment. So you can push a little bit, but yeah, there's not that many.
Yep. Yeah. So look, a good broker like yourself will know their client. They'll know what they can get them to. Speak to your broker before you go and bid at auctions is the moral to the story.
Absolutely.
And have some parameters around what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's a big decision.
But my objective is to buy off-market, pre-market, before auction, private sale. Now, we don't always do that, obviously. A lot of properties within Melbourne are going to auction, a huge percentage.
Has that increased recently, or it's always been?
It's always been the auction capital of Australia. It's always been the street theatre out in the public. There's been a few agents that have tried to do it in rooms like they do in Sydney, but in Melbourne, it's definitely a street theatre. It's definitely a fun experience. A lot more fun if you buy, a lot more fun if you have no emotional connection to it. And there's a lot of very good ones and a lot of very bad ones, so depending on which one you attend. But it's certainly a really strong fundamental of the Melbourne market.
If someone was buying themselves, which obviously people do
all the time
on a daily basis, what are some tips, tricks, hacks, ways for people to buy property?
Look, I think it's really important that you are educated. So going out and spending at least 3-4 weeks at open for inspections, at auctions, understanding the market, understanding what the agent's quoting as opposed to what the property sells for, understanding how many buyers are going to be bidding at auctions, and by attending auctions you'll get an idea. Keeping your ears open and open for inspections, understanding what buyers are saying about those properties. All those things are really important. Once you've found the property, you want to make an offer, and if you're in Western Australia and it's most likely going to be a private sale, then I would say to the agent, where's the vendor at? Is the vendor at a point where they're willing to make a decision and accept an offer, or are they still testing the market? Because making an offer, if you're not ready, if the vendor's not ready to accept an offer, is a waste of time. If the agent says to you, look, it's week 1 and they're really wanting at least 2 or 3 weeks on the market, then say, look, let's keep in contact with each other, and I'd like to get involved when the vendor's ready to sell. The next thing, as I just said, understand the rules of engagement. Understand how's your offer going to be presented. Does it need to be in writing? Does it need to have a deposit check? Is an email okay? Is it going to be shopped? In other words, are you going to go out and speak to other buyers and tell them that there's an offer in place? Is there going to be a deadline? When is that deadline? Are you going to expose the offer? Or is it going to be best offers by a certain time? All those things are really important before you even make an offer. Getting the documentation checked by your solicitor or conveyancer, getting a letter of advice, making sure there's no conditions in the offer that you don't want to be adhered to, making sure that you're not getting yourself in a predicament that you don't want to get involved in. Talking to your mortgage broker before you actually make the offer, whether it's subject to finance, whether you can get it subject to a building and pest inspection, so that way you can get a building and pest inspection post acceptance and then you're not incurring an unnecessary fee. If not, you need to incur that fee before you buy. I would definitely be strongly recommending a building and pest inspection. Your biggest asset that you're going to commit to ever, and you think you know what you're looking at. I've been doing this 40 years. My dad also was a builder together with an estate agent. I still get building and pest inspections. It's really important.
I've got a story on that. And they were really close friends of mine. They bought in Melbourne. This is a number of years ago now. And they were, what should we do around building and pests? Same thing. Please get it. Oh, it's $1,000, $500,000. So just spend it. You're about to spend $1 million. $1,000 is fine. They begrudgingly went and did it. Completely riddled with termites. it was going to auction that Saturday. Anyway, they withdrew their attendance, and the agent called them, said, "Why?" I said, "Well, we just got the report back. It's riddled with termites. Can you please not come to the auction and tell anyone?" So they're like, "You're kidding, right?" Anyway, they did go to the auction. Someone bought it unknowingly, and spent $1 million. I couldn't believe that could happen without someone's knowledge.
Yep. Very common that type of thing happens. Whether it's termite, there's lots of other things that can occur with a home. Termites is just one of the big ones, but there's lots of other things. And look, a building and pest inspection is not just to give you an idea of what's wrong with the home. It's an idea to give you a maintenance plan. You might still buy a home that has faults, because no home is perfect. It just doesn't work. Even new homes are not perfect. But what it does is it puts a good maintenance plan in place. Okay, I need to do this straight away, and I need to do X, Y, and Z over the next 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. It's just a great way to be able to plan. You're mad if you're not doing it. Then I would be, once I've got all my ducks in a line and I'm educated and I've got the rules of engagement down pat, and I'm ready to make an offer because I know that the vendor's there and ready to make a decision, it's not just about price. People think, oh, well, I think I need to offer this. So establish with the agent what the vendor's motivation is. Have they bought? Do they need a short settlement? Do they need a long settlement? Do we need to marry it up with another settlement because they've already purchased? Do they need a deposit of 5% or 10%? 10% is typically common when you're purchasing. Sometimes it's not just about price. It's about conditions. And if multiple offers are going in at once, but your offer might be a few $1,000s less, but maybe unconditional because your broker's told you that they can, you can back yourself and you'll be fine. That's a stronger offer. The right settlement, the right deposit, all those things can make the difference of success.
Are deposit bonds common in Victoria?
Look, they're not that common in Victoria. I always used to advise my vendors that I didn't like them. And the reason why I didn't like them, bank guarantees are quite different to deposit bonds. Bank guarantees you can call upon and you'll be fine. Deposit bonds are really a bond based on the deposit being paid that you can call on if they default. And there is a process involved that is a complex process that you then get involved in, and it's not a straight deal. If you're holding a deposit and somebody defaults, you can issue a rescission notice. They default on their deposit, they lose their deposit. There are mechanisms that you can pursue them, but most of the time it makes no sense to pursue them. You keep their deposit, you move on, you resell the property. It's just a cleaner, easier process. It also means that it puts you in a position where in Victoria, with 28 days notice, you issue what's called a Section 27. That deposit generally is released to you. And if you're if you're selling on a longer settlement, that gives you time to use that deposit to go and buy another property and use it as a deposit.
Interesting.
So you can do that.
Wow. That makes a huge difference when you're trying to do the next stage of your transaction.
Absolutely. And this is the things that you need to ask the agent. Have they bought? Well, if they haven't bought, let them know that I'm willing to sign a Section 27 once my solicitor's done the due diligence, and we'll release that deposit to them, and they'll be able to use that to purchase. So these are all strategies when you're negotiating that can sweeten the pot and make you stand out from anybody else. If I've been to a property and my client's with me and the vendor's there, I make sure I introduce them, because you become a person. You're not a number anymore. And you let the agent know, look, I did speak to your vendor. Let them know it's Gary that that they met, and we love the home and we're going to raise our family there. And people do get emotional. Oh, I think I really want to sell it to somebody that's going to move into it and enjoy it and raise their family, as opposed to an investor. I liked Gary.
I loved a few things you touched on, but I really appreciate you talking about the settlement period and trying to marry up settlements, because the person selling has somewhere else to go. They do. We know they do. So why don't we try and make sure that their needs are met rather than focusing only on the price?
Absolutely. And that's what I'll do. Quite often we'll make an offer and the agent will come back and say, no, they won't sell it that, they'll sell at this. And I'll say, okay, so I know they want a 60-day settlement and we put in 120 because we've got something to sell. But if we can pull that back to 60, does that change their stance at all? You're happy to go and talk to them and resubmit it maybe on a 60-day basis and see what happens? So that will often change the air of discussion. It also means we're re-engaging with them, whereas other buyers may be, okay, leave it with us. We'll see what we can do. It just means it brings it back to catering for them, which just may win you the business.
It's all part of the negotiation. It's all part of the negotiation. And when you only buy one or two properties in your life, that negotiation is a really big thing. And so having those tips and tricks is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thanks for sharing that.
I would also suggest that before you make an offer, go and knock on the neighbours' doors. I love knocking on neighbours' doors. Across the road, next door, whoever you can bump into, Mrs. Jessup down the street that you walk past to get in your car, say hello, talk to them, find out the lay of the land. Oh, do you know why they're selling? Oh, you're lovely people. They've just grown out of the home. They've been here for 20 years. It's very different to the place is termite infested, because I'm telling you now, the neighbour will tell you everything if you're nice.
Absolutely. Have you ever advised a client not to buy a property because something a neighbour said? Has that ever come up?
We've had that before, yes. We have had that before where a neighbour may have mentioned that there's been conflict between two neighbours, one next door to each other, and you'll ask what the conflict is. And most people work on the basis of not wanting conflict with their neighbours because they actually live next door to them. If neighbours are willing to have conflict, they're generally people you don't want to live next door to because that conflict will continue. So yes, but then not all my clients listen to me. I can give you all the recommendations in the world, all the suggestions in the world, all the advice in the world. But if you turn around to me and you say as a client, I want that, I will buy that for you. That's my job.
Yeah. That's great. I'm fascinated to hear your work-life balance, given the nature of the industry you're in and people wanting a piece of you at all the times. As you said, you really control of your own diary. How do you balance family, wife, kids, business?
I've gotten a lot better at it. When I started in the business, in fact, we were touching on this before we turned the mics on. When I started in the business, I would get calls from people saying, can you see me at 7 o'clock on a Friday? And I'm so keen to do business. I would be there. If you said 10 o'clock, I would be there at 10 o'clock. But what you realise as you stay longer in business, that people that want to do business with you will make time to see you. It's not just about it convenient for them, it's convenient for me as well. So it's really important that I let people know that time doesn't suit. I'm very honest with people. In fact, we had a booking and I had to change it because I'd forgotten about a booking that I had with my daughter to go to Annie yesterday. And I rang you and I didn't say to you, sorry, something's come up. I actually told you exactly what it was. And the minute you read the reason why, your heart melted. And you said, we need to change this.
Went straight to Angus and said, Angus, can we please change this?
So I think being honest with people and letting them know that you do have a life outside the business that you're in and this is why we can't meet at this time is really important. I think making time to engage with your children, I am very lucky that I run a business where I can drop my kids off to school. I do some of the pickups. One of my passions is cooking, so I'll make sure I cook dinner for them on a regular basis. I coach my son's soccer team. I attend my children's sporting events as much as possible if I can. Soccer, football, gymnastics, basketball, they're into it all. So I make sure karate as well. So I make sure that I attend as many of those things as possible. I make sure that I try and attend as many of the schooling events, the day that they get their certificate for a valued student or whatever it might be going on at school. I make sure that I try and attend that. That's really important. And I look after myself. I've really learned over the years to actually balance it with myself, me being most important. I try and keep fit. I ride my push bike 140 odd kilometres a week. I've got a Harley, so I ride my Harley as well. I play golf, so I try and prioritise that. As I said, I love to cook, so I have a big family cook up on a Sunday, and we have family fun day and the family gathering on a Sunday evening for dinner as well. And that's normally 12, 14 people.
Oh, that's cousins and
Whoever
family, yeah.
generally it's the same core group of about 6 to 8 people and then some ring-ins. But I love that. That's really important. That's part of, coming back to what do I call a home? That's part of being a home, is having that spirit and that joy of gathering. And some Sundays I crack open a bottle of red. I believe Angus, our sound engineer, loves a bottle of red. I crack open a bottle of red at about 2:00 in the afternoon, and I start my cook up, and by the time everybody gets there at 7, I've drunk a bottle of wine and dinner is ready and I'm happy.
Happy days, good night's sleep.
But it's really important that you are in control of your diary and you control your destiny.
And the business partner and life partner, how does that go? How do you manage that?
That has its challenges. I'm sure all men will acknowledge that children, career, being married and having my life partner is really, really challenging at times. But the one thing that I have learnt is communicate, stay connected, and have a date night regularly.
It's so true. And my wife and I, because we're in business together as well, and it's and we're getting better. But it's certainly had its challenges, and there's no real way to turn off the business from family and home time as well. So we're really trying to do the date nights and whatever, but the cost of going out now is so expensive.
Well, I took my wife to Sydney for 4 nights just to stay connected and have date night, just to be away from the kids. But no, I think it's also really important. I remember, because I've been married formally and she's still a very close friend of mine. In fact, she attends our family dinners on a Sunday night still with her partner. So we're very connected still, because we obviously
really special.
It is special. I still get to share 20 years of memories with the person that I had them. And I remember when we were separating, she said to me that she never felt like she was the most important person in the world. And that was a life lesson.
Yeah.
Okay. She always said to me that she felt like the work came first. And I learnt from that. And what I do now is if I go out with my lovely wife, I turn off the phone, I put it away. I don't keep reaching for it. We try and not focus on business at all. We try and not focus on the kids at all. We try and focus on us. It's challenging though.
Yeah. Some big life lessons in there. Yeah, hit a heartstring for me.
Well, I'm older than you. In fact, I think I'm substantially older than you. I'm 56.
Yeah, 20 years.
20 years. So hopefully I've learnt something in 20 years. And I've got your kids and my youngest, I think, are not that far away from each other.
Yeah. Clemmy's 5. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So.
And my youngest is 7. And I'm 20 years older than you.
That's really, I love just talking to people. I think that's the thing that I'm really enjoying about the podcast is you're genuinely sitting with someone and connecting with them and listening to those things that I can take away myself. You go, how do I improve myself by listening to that? So thank you for sharing.
Pleasure.
I love finishing off the conversations with talking about how proud we are of ourselves. And I think this is a really good lead into that. We don't talk about ourselves enough in terms of what we're proud of. And we're really trying to instill that in our daughters because listening to them talk about that it melts my heart. And so I'd love to hear from you what you're most proud of personally, professionally, whatever that might be.
Wow, that's a big one. What are you proud of the most? Well, professionally, I'm probably most proud of having built a business in 5-6 years of running this particular one, where it is a referral-only business. I don't advertise and I don't market myself. I don't Facebook market. I don't in any way do anything. In fact, my accountant said to me the other week, how do you do business? Because obviously it was the end of the financial year and I had to do all my facts and figures. And he said, how do you do business? And I noticed in the marketing column, there's no money spent. And I said to him, well, you know all those presents? He said, yeah, I wondered about them. He said, you send out a lot of presents. I said, well, that's to keep me top of mind to most people, but it is a referral-only business. The business comes because of mortgage brokers, financial planners, accountants, solicitors, and some real estate agents, together with obviously clients that I've sold for over the years and purchased for over the years. So I'm most proud of the fact that I run a business that has a constant stream of clients that doesn't require me to market or advertise at all. It comes by way of word of mouth because I think I've done a pretty good job for people and that's what people tell me. So that's probably professionally what I'm most proud of. Personally, what I'm most proud of is having 3 children at different stages. One raised and independent, 18 turning 19, studying nursing, right down to the 7-year-old. Be kind to people, is what I tell them. Treat people in the manner that you wish to be treated. Think about what you can do to have a positive impact on the world and on people. I think that's really important. And do what makes your heart sing. They're the things I'd like to instill and believe that I have instilled in my children. And from a personal level with my wife, I'm most proud that we have a unified agenda in the way that we bring our children up. She is amazing from the point of view that she allows my former wife to enter my home or our home every Sunday. She gets a little bit jealous at times when we talk about history and a moment in time, and she'll say, "You always have to reminisce." But what an amazing lady to allow the former wife into the home with her partner, and we all break bread together and enjoy life together. We've even holidayed overseas together.
That's a new level.
So that gives you a concept of what I've been able to achieve around myself with the most amazing people around me. And that's what I'm most proud of.
Oh, that's so special. And just the ability for your kids to see that to unfold as well with your family. It's really cool.
Yep, absolutely. They don't get that conflict that most blended families get. They don't see their sister as their half-sister. They don't see my former wife as the enemy. They actually call her name's Pauline, and they call her Mama PP. So she's just one of the members of the village.
Thank you so much for sharing today. I've loved the depth that it's gone, obviously towards the back end, but some of those things that you've mentioned about buying property are so key for anyone listening. And rather than listening to your uncle who's an expert at the barbecue, I reckon they should be listening to someone like yourself. So thank you very much for sharing.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thanks, Rob.
Hope you enjoy the rest of Melbourne.
Thank you so much for listening and being a part of our community at That Backyard Property Podcast. We would love it if you could like, comment, or even share with a family member or a friend that might get something useful from today's episode. We can't wait to see you again next Tuesday.